Alrighty then. Hello, everybody. Welcome, podcast listeners, to the Alex Cuesta Show. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm doing fantastic. We are back for our weekly show. David, say hi to the people.
Hola. Hola.
David, how are you on this fine evening? Again, you really have to talk a lot after last episode.
Why?
Because you love small talk.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I pissed you off before this episode began, so I'm happy.
You did. We'll definitely get into it in this episode. But again, everybody, hello. Before we get going into any of the important stuff, like, share, follow, subscribe, give us a rate on 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes, especially because I don't think any of the other places give you that ability. And also word of mouth. Tell everyone you know. We have this cool once a week show and also the dailies going on. Lots of content being pumped out from the Alex Cuesta Show. And I think you'll enjoy it because while the week is very political, I think these shows, Dave, have been steering a little bit less political. So it's kind of giving a little bit of a break from the heavy politics and also Positivity Monday, which I skipped this past Monday because I didn't do a show, but we have Positivity Mondays. So you kind of get 4 weeks of fucked up politics and me being an angry human. And then you get one day of me being a genuinely happy human. And then I get with David, and I think it's going to be a happy occasion. And it's usually not. Once we start talking, it usually gets unhappy. But again, spread it word of mouth. In terms of social medias, none of you cretins still deserve it. Just go search the Alex Cuesta Show. You will find it anywhere you can have a social media. So that's that. Dave, USFL draft just happened. How are you feeling about this league? Our buddy who has an opinion podcast network, good friend Matt Santos, had a large issue with the draft setup. The draft is finishing or has finished today.
Yes.
It was a 2-day draft. Again, today's the 23rd. We're going to release this on Saturday. We record, yada, yada. We went over this already. You people know. Anyway, but the draft is completed. How do you feel about the prospects of the USFL lasting past week 5?
I don't know. I mean, do I think it's going to be some masterpiece? No. But I am interested to see how it goes because, listen, you're not going to know most of the names in this draft no matter what. So not knowing who's on what team doesn't matter at this point. What does matter, though, is the product that they're going to put on the field and the rules they're going to implement. I don't know too much about what that's going to be because I don't think they've put out their full rules list and the changes to what we'll see from like NFL play and college play.
Yep.
But that's what's going to make this fun.
A little plug here. Today on the Play Action podcast, good buddy of Opinions Podcast Network as well, Will Gethard, Colton Gesser. They had on one of their friends of the show, which is pretty awesome, Dean Blandino. And I was in that room because I like to interact. And I asked this exact question about USFL rules. And he did a really cool breakdown about what he thinks. Because people have to remember, if you like a lot of football, Dean Blandino was the head of person deciding on the rules and officiating for the XFL, the last version of it. So he's very in tune to how this works. So go listen to that. You can definitely find the recording of it. Go listen to the Play Action podcast. Great show. But go ahead, Dave. You have anything else to add with that?
I was going to say, but that's just the product that they end up putting out on the field is what matters the most. The players may not be exactly full professional level that you would love to see, but if they can find a way to make this a fast-paced game and make it so that at least the offenses can move the ball and you still see some credible defense, people will be fine with watching it. Now, I will not lie to you. I do think that the XFL would have at least lasted the full year if not for COVID.
Yes.
I feel like that the league kind of got destroyed from a pandemic. I think it's unfair to say the XFL just wouldn't have lasted the full year no matter what. Because I thought they were actually doing pretty okay in some of their smaller stadiums and some of the bigger areas they didn't care as much. But they did have a very large cup snake at one of the games. So that's always a good thing. But overall, like I said, the players aren't always going to be the greatest, but I'm happy that they get to play some ball. Maybe they can prove themselves a little bit to whoever's watching. You never know what could happen when you're out there playing. And I'm hoping that with some of the rules that they implement, that we could see some fun new football. Because I really thought the kickoff in XFL was much better in the NFL.
Significantly better.
I thought some of the rule changes overall that the XFL and some of the presentation stuff that the XFL put in was really fun and really interesting. Some of it was a little wild, yep. like interviewing the players right after a touchdown, and some of that was, but it made for fun TV. I will give them that. So maybe not everything the NFL will adopt, but I think I sincerely think that like the kickoff thing should really be something that now like the USFL should think of as well. Maybe they can think they can make it better, but I think the NFL should really think about that too. Because I've said this in our group chat before, but I really love heading into a really big tense game where everything's on a line only for it to start with a touchback. It's the most anticlimactic thing to do. Like I would like some kind of substance in the start of the game.
So to reiterate with the XFL, I believe if you got a touchback, it was put to the 35. So they had to kick it in the bounds, but also no one was allowed to move until the ball was caught. So it didn't have the return guys on their heels with the kickoff guys running full speed at them. It really lessened a lot of injuries, but also allowed for an exciting kick return. It was a very, very good system. My biggest, I think my litmus test, and I think I said this for both the AAF and the XFL. And the XFL will be back in 2023. So we'll see what happens. And we'll talk a little quick side about the deal thing that they just announced because it's interesting. What my litmus test is, it has to be as good or better than high level college football, because that's what I like to see. If it's as good, if it's as good as watching Ohio State play Michigan every week, then I'm cool with that, because I think that needs to be at least the level, because when you're watching the national championship game, you're probably watching 6 to 10 pros on each side of the ball at each time. So you're not getting full pros, but you're getting a professional presentation in those types of big games. That's what you expect out of this. You want to see good, competent play. You want to see stars. You want to see fundamentally sound football. If you get fundamentally sound football, then it's going to be fun to watch. And I think that that's something that you need to expect. High level, if not better, a little bit better than college football. That's what I think they need to provide to survive. Now, one thing that they're doing that is different that I think hurt the XFL big time and maybe would have been their downfall, even long run. I think they would have finished the season, but you mentioned stadium filling. You mentioned those types of ratings. They got hurt big time later. We were always tracking it. We were looking at it. And they were hurt big time later in the season. Maybe COVID scare had a little bit to do with that because it was emerging. But the larger markets, your LA was fucking terrible. New York was terrible. They did not care about football. And it showed also in the stadiums. They were trying to fill up, East Rutherford. They were trying to fill up MetLife. They were trying to fill up. They were only using the lower bowl and they couldn't fill up MetLife in these other big stadiums, where USFL got pretty smart. They're playing in Alabama. They're playing in Birmingham in a stadium that I believe holds a max of 20,000. So they're hedging their bets, and it's $10 tickets. I think you said that a few times, Dave.
Yes.
So they're hedging their bets that they could sell 20,000 $10 tickets and that they can fill up the stadium. And if you ever heard 20,000 people, it can get loud. It can get exciting. So if you have that on TV and all you're hearing is the loud noise, it's only 20,000 fans, but it's going to be fun to watch, because when there is no fans in the stands, we saw this during the pandemic, a big play isn't as fun. It's awesome. The athleticism is great. Outside of the UFC, where you heard them getting knocked the fuck out of each other. Outside of that, and there were some cool times in football where you heard big hits, when you heard guys in the NBA curse and drop N-bombs at each other left and right. That was fun stuff, but it wasn't what you wanted. We're now in the NBA's back. Even the All-Star game, just watching Steph Curry drain 16 threes. The All-Star game is a joke, but the crowd reaction to that makes everything. And when you can get 20,000 fans rocking. And Alabama, I think, has no horse in this race either. So it's really cool that I think it's a good idea for their part. And they have a TV deal. So we're going to see how good it goes. Like you said, ultimately the product has to be good. Another quick aside, Dave, before we get into the main topic. We mentioned the XFL. The XFL, their de facto commissioner, Garcia, I think it's Danny Garcia, I think is his name or something like that. I know the last name is Garcia. I might be making up the first name. I need a research guy. Dave, we need a research guy. Maybe you'll be the research guy. But he announced that there is an agreement between them and the NFL. It is not a D-League agreement. It is not a player transfer on the fly agreement, but it's kind of if you want to test out some different rules, if you want to test out some different facets of the game outside of player trading, the XFL is willing to take on some of this stuff. So, a Skycam has been tested forever. If the NFL really wants to put out their version, they're going to do it in the XFL first. If the NFL wants to test out new pass interference rules, we'll see it in the XFL first. And high levels of enforcement of certain things. So that's a pretty cool thing. And I think equipment sharing is also a part of it, where if they have certain technologies for safety or things like that they want to use, the XFL will get it first, which if I'm a player, I'm a little bit edgy about, because it's like I'm a guinea pig for safety. But at the same time, you're getting a chance to play pro football and put film out there. So I don't think you care that much. But I'm curious, Dave, and this is something I didn't think of the last 2 days, but I'm thinking of it now. How much was the USFL player pool affected by those who were already committed to going into the XFL pool, and that know that there's a high chance or a guaranteed chance of them getting drafted by an XFL team?
I don't know.
Like your Johnny Manziel's, or even potentially,
Johnny Manziel wants to do any of that.
But someone of that level, your Trent Richardson, your Josh Johnson, your people that have more name recognition, that played at a higher level school, do you think that they maybe would pull themselves out of the USFL?
It's a possibility. I don't know. It gets very difficult, mainly because that's a year out, and you have to see how the USFL does in the first place. Because honestly, some of these players could be playing in the USFL. It doesn't do well. It ends in 5 weeks, and then they can go and play for the XFL. So I don't know how much it really affected it at all. But it's interesting to think about. I just think it's a year out. XFL really hasn't said anything until just recently.
Yeah.
And the USFL has kind of been planning out this already. And yeah, I don't think it affected it too much, at least not greatly enough to really hinder USFL more than everything else in its way.
And lastly, USFL put out all their uniforms. You looked at them, you showed us all them. What do you think of the uniforms just as a total, as a full package?
I think they're all
Seeing that on the field, do you think they're going to be okay? I think Pittsburgh's is terrible. I think they're the worst of the bunch. And I really like, who's the Breakers? I forget who the Breakers are. They're
New Orleans.
I love New Orleans uniform. We're going to be Jersey fans, New Jersey Generals. I said it looks like 1990s Rutgers. That's what I think of the New Jersey Generals. So it's okay.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think overall the package is all right. That's really what it is. And that's
is it going to look like professional football?
That's all you need. All you need is all right.
Yeah.
You don't need amazing.
Yeah. It's not going to look like two semi-pro teams running around. They're going to look like professionals playing football.
Exactly. And what we get from professional pictures being taken of these uniforms is going to look different from what we see on the field.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how they're going to look on the field. No one really does, unless you've been around USFL, because I would assume they at least checked it out.
No.
Hopefully.
No, they certainly didn't.
You would hope they would think about that. But it's going to look different. And it seems like they'll look fine.
Okay.
Like they're not going to look like bad or pee-wee kind of ish.
So jersey shirts and hats are available. I'm probably going to cop a shirt and a hat soon of the Generals. Might as well. I'm not going to do a jersey because jerseys are a little permanent. If they do ever become defunct, a shirt and a hat's still dope.
Yeah, I'd say a hat's probably fine.
And last thing, fan-controlled football league is a perfect example that a league can exist without gigantic notoriety, still be lots of fun, and still continue, because they're coming back with the second season, Dave. And they got a lot of Twitter fanfare, and they had some fun playing the arena style with fan-controlled football. So look out. I really like their thing. I like watching their highlights. Their games were fun because they streamed them live on Twitter, and I think they even streamed them live on Twitch too.
Yes.
So
yeah.
They're a cool league. If you like football in general, go look up FCFL, Fan Controlled Football League. It's a really fun league. Some talented guys play there too. So go look it up. All right. So let's get into our main topic of the day, Dave. It is your absolute love for remakes, reboots, and nostalgia, because nobody likes a good remake and a good reboot than you, Dave.
So, as you already know, Alex, and maybe some people listening to this do know that 5 people that do listen to this.
I think we
I have become I have become more of a snobby bitch, more of an avant-garde kind of guy on some of my entertainment, mainly because I like weird things. I like out there things. I don't like unoriginal stuff, very vanilla stuff. I am accepting, and in fact, I very much believe that tropes are a good thing. Use tropes in your writing and in your entertainment, but use them well, and you still have a good product. But for me, a lot of things that come out now, especially the remakes and the reboots, they're not any good. Mainly because they're not actually bringing anything more to the original IP. All they're doing is saying, hey, you remember this? You remember that? It's the South Park member berries. That's all it is. And it doesn't actually advance the story. It doesn't give you anything good. Like, honestly, you could probably go read fan fictions that people have made, not the sexual kind. I know a lot of people might jump to that when you hear that word, but actual fan fictions people have made of these IPs that are probably better, because they care a lot more about these IPs than these big companies. They actually care about these characters. They may relate to some of them, but they understand that these are dynamic characters and they're not just static in whatever kind of facet that the big company now has bought and decided to try to make some money off of it. So this brings me to hurting you before this.
Well, before you hurt me, I have a question. You can hurt me in a little bit. I'm not ready for it yet.
Okay.
How do you feel about superhero stuff, though? Is that kind of a different avenue? Because there is only, I always hate whenever they reboot, they retell the story in the beginning, especially ones like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, where if you don't already know the origin story, you don't need to know it, or that they waste a whole movie doing it or a whole half an hour. Like, it could be summed up pretty quickly. And I think Batman's the worst at this. All the Batman remakes have gone full movies re-explaining how Batman begins. How do you feel? Yeah, shut your mouth. I realized after I said it. But how do you feel about kind of superheroes? Are they kind of in their own sphere of remakes and reboots, or are you still as fuckish on those?
So there is something to be said about introducing a character to a new audience, but a lot of what we're seeing, whenever they kind of reboot a superhero right now, it's mainly because the other movie just didn't do well. So you're not introducing them to a new audience. Mm-hmm. You're just showing them you're showing them to people who already know what this hero is. It's not like you're trying to get kids into this character that they don't know. It's understandable to have a full introduction movie for a character when it's a whole new generation that really doesn't know much about this character. Now, personally, for me, I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't watched a lot of new Marvel stuff. I kind of fell out of love with it after the full Endgame trounce. I thought Endgame was pretty good. But my thing about Marvel is, I don't know, they seem to have gotten too used to their style, at least for me. Everything's a one-liner. Everything is somewhat comedic. Yes, there's some dramatic scenes, but it's always just a one-liner after it. I don't know. And I feel like it worked for some movies like Thor Ragnarok. I felt like he kind of needed that because Dark World was not good.
No.
He needed Ragnarok. He needed something fun. He needed to be a good character again. And I think it worked there. I think it really saved a lot there. I think Guardians of the Galaxy really worked for, but I don't think it works for all of Marvel as a whole. Now, like I said, I haven't watched a lot of new stuff, so maybe they changed up a lot more, and you could tell me that if you want to, and that's fine. But that's kind of a part of the superhero thing that worries me, at least Marvel-wise. DC-wise, unless it's Batman, they don't know how to do it anymore. They took a good step with Wonder Woman in the first one, and I never watched the second one. I was thinking about it, but after hearing all the reviews, and it's not just, oh, it's not good, it's atrocious. I'm not going to watch it if it's that bad. I just refuse to outright. So DC has a lot to do.
Well, the second Suicide Squad I've heard is kind of carrying the mantle right now.
I heard it was
great
good
things, not just good, great things.
I heard it was great.
Yes,
but that's another thing for me though. It's just like I don't know why it would be up to me to forgive a studio for doing so badly in their first go around with a.
The only reason I would is because Margot Robbie was so brilliant as Harley Quinn. Just to see her, just to see the studio get it right for Margot Robbie would make me happy, because she is the embodiment of Harley Quinn. Just like, she was born to be Harley Quinn, just like Robert Downey was born to be Iron Man. There's some people that are just perfect, and I am happy that they realized that it's not worth putting another quote unquote bigger star like Will Smith in the front of it when you have somebody who's so charismatic and fits the role so well as Margot Robbie, and just kind of made her the it factor. And, and I heard Birds of Prey was actually a good movie. And no, it didn't get the fanfare. But I actually heard it was a good movie. Again, carried by Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. So it seems like DC has something there now. I hear what you're saying. And if you want to talk about the Marvel stuff, I've talked to you plenty of times that WandaVision is an absolute masterpiece. And it does completely step out of that realm. Okay. It does completely step out of that because it shows Wanda Maximoff and her power. And she's a very serious person anyway. So seeing her stepping out of her skin a little in the sitcom way of the different eras, and watching Elizabeth Olsen kind of, do her thing and be a little more of an actress than kind of the Sarkovian, stoic. It was definitely a different step. I do have to say Loki, it's kind of caught in that because that's what Loki is as a character. He is a lot of the sarcasm, but again, it explores a little more depth into Loki. Yeah. And Owen Wilson's character is amazing. It's worth watching just for Owen Wilson. Yeah. So I think that Marvel kind of understands your gripe. I'm not going to lie, because Eternals, apparently I've seen mixed reviews on Eternals. I've seen really good and I've seen really awful. I'm going to watch it and make my own decision because I love superhero movies and it looked great. Just from the previews, just the action wise looked really good. And there's a lot of really good actors and actresses in that. Yeah. So I'd give it a chance. But it looks like they kind of went in that direction. Hawkeye, our father loves Hawkeye, and our father is a pretty tough critic when it comes to certain things. If it sucks, he'll tell you it sucks. He really liked Hawkeye. I haven't watched it yet. But again, they're bringing back Guardians. You're going to get that style again with Guardians in 3. And Guardians has been one of the ones that's been very, very good for Marvel. But Dave, I think they're kind of hearing you. And I think they understand that they need to take a little more chances and do a little bit of different things. And I think WandaVision kind of confirmed that for them, that they can take those chances and get wide success, rapid success. So I think your faith is going to be, I think you're going to be rewarded in your criticism. I think Marvel kind of gets it. As long as they don't go super woke, they'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is just like, it's called phase 2. You got to switch things up a little bit. And I just want to make it clear to anyone that's listening, I'm not disparaging you for liking these movies. Like,
no, he fucking hates you.
I opened this with saying I'm a snobby bitch. So
you certainly are.
But what brings us talking about this, because this is not really about Marvel. This is not really about DC. It's not really about any of that right now. What made me want to talk about this is the new Amazon series coming out, The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Now, I actually just showed the teaser trailer to Alex here. He's never seen it, and he didn't know about a lot of things that were going on in this series.
And a little background in terms of me, Tolkien is quite literally, Middle-earth is my favorite in any sort of thing. I'm an anime, manga weeb. I love Star Wars, Star Trek, all that. I read Lord of the Rings in 6th grade. I finished the Silmarillion in 8th. If anyone knows anything, Silmarillion's a Bible, quite literally a Bible. I'm one of the rare people that kept on buying all Christopher Tolkien's edits, Children of Huron, Tales of Middle-earth. So I love everything Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings. So Dave, continue ripping my heart out of my chest.
So the biggest problem I would say with this, and I think you would agree with me, is the complete disregard for source material. I know, I'm pretty sure you agree with me with this, but for me, snobby boy over here, I think especially an artist's work should be always respected to what the artist wanted it to be. And it should be always always regarded in that way. You shouldn't really mess with it too much because it's their work. If they want to do it this way, you don't have to like it. It's still their work. They still want to finish it this way. They still want to do it that way. So in Rings of Power, Amazon apparently doesn't have the license for any of the books for this particular era in Middle Earth that they're covering. And this is a prequel to all of the Lord of the Rings movies we've seen so far. They don't have the license to any of this lore at all. They basically have the license to all the movies we've already seen. And I believe that's it. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think that's it. So everything they're writing for Rings of Power and everything they seem to be putting on screen is basically all fan fiction, which is insane to think about coming from somewhere like Amazon. Now, one of the big issues with this is the blatant disregard of source material. Tolkien wrote this very specifically, and I know you'll attest to this, but certain things, like certain races of characters, are only come in certain ways. Like dwarves, from birth to death, have beards. No matter what gender, they have beards. And elves, now you could correct me on this, Alex, but I believe all elves were pale-skinned.
All elves were pale-skinned. There were wood elves that were darker skinned, but they were not dark. They were more like kind of my tone and olive. They were considered dark. They were considered tainted, but they were never.
The pale skins are more Casper.
Yes, the pale skins are what you saw with, Legolas and Elrond and all of that group. Mm-hmm. There were high elves. Dave, just stop you. What annoys me is with this too is you talked about respecting kind of the source material, and it's J.R.R. Tolkien is the reason why we have fantasy. Obviously there were fantasy. Actually, yes. There was fantasy before that. Don't get me wrong, but the tropes that we see, the things that they follow now, there is no Witcher, which is currently having massive success. There is no Aragon. There is no Harry Potter. There is no Hunger Games. There is none of this.
So basically, think of it this way:
J.R.R. Tolkien. He's the Stan Lee. He's the Jack Kirby. He quite literally is the god of this genre. And to disregard his vast amount of works, Lord of the Rings is considered his greatest work and his most full work, with Hobbit being kind of like the kid version leading into it. But he has thousands upon thousands more pages and legends and lore for each race. Very well thought out. Very well done. And his son, Christopher Tolkien, has made sure to edit all of it in his father's vein and put it out perfectly. Mm-hmm. And the way that I was going into the assumption that they were using source material before this, similar to the way that HBO has been working with George R.R. Martin. Another one, Game of Thrones does not exist without Lord of the Rings. None of these ideas happen without Lord of the Rings. And, under the assumption they were working with source material from George R.R. Martin, you're getting this new prequel about the Targaryens. That is a book that was already written from George R.R. Martin. Obviously, liberties need to be taken when it's put to the screen. That is a granted and a given. And I believe that Christopher Tolkien probably refused to work with Amazon because they probably were not going to give him any say. And if you're not going to give the artist any say, it's when it always becomes fucked up. Mm-hmm. Perfect example was the Avatar, when M. Night Shyamalan just only did whatever the fuck he wanted with The Last Airbender. And it ended up being awful.
Another movie I didn't see.
One of the greatest series, not just kids, not anything, one of the greatest series of all time. You can ask anyone that watches, that's open-minded and willing to watch kind of that genre. It is one of the greatest series kind of in like the American anime genre. And that goes with Samurai Jack. They're probably tied as the two greatest like American anime. And in terms of just anime in general, you have Japanese people that source material that will talk about The Last Airbender as one of the greatest tales ever told. And again, source material being abused. Dragon Ball Evolution, another perfect example. And it happens and it's on and on. And Dave, it's just frustrating. And I think this kind of goes with your remakes and reboots. And this is when they go wrong. And I kind of tend to think, Dave, you want, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm ranting.
No, it's fine. I was going to let you finish, but I was going to say this is why when I sent you what I want to talk about, I titled it Gatekeeping and Fandoms, because a lot of people have a lot of trouble with gatekeeping. But the thing is that you gatekeep something because you do not want it tarnished, because you want to accept people that are going to come in and understand that this is the way it's just someone wrote it. And you can have plenty of discussions about it, but you're not going to disregard what they meant lore wise or what they meant for this to happen. You're not disregarding it. You might be having fun and adding things, but your additions only matter to you. The artist's play is the artist.
It's why we love Ryan Reynolds so much with Deadpool. He refused to make it incorrectly. Mm-hmm. He refused to allow it to be anything but Deadpool. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he even fought to do voice overtures to create the 3 Deadpools in his head, but he got that squashed and he let that go. Because anyone that knows Deadpool knows there's like 9 Deadpools floating around.
Well, yeah, there's the white text box and the yellow text box.
Yes, and then there's just Deadpool's text box, and he's always arguing with himself. Deadpool's always at war with himself. That's kind of his internal struggle. It makes him kind of a great character, but he was able to use his quips and his wit with Ryan Reynolds, and he brought Deadpool to life by fighting for Deadpool allowed to be Deadpool on screen with a rated R. Henry Cavill's another one with The Witcher. He's an absolute nerd. He knows exactly what The Witcher is supposed to be from the games and the books, and he fights for the character to stay as pure as possible. That is a huge ask, and especially considering the fact that he told NBC to kick rocks with Man of Steel because he was finishing a raid because he didn't want to talk to them about Man of Steel perhaps. Yeah. But it's like, we need more people like that to do these things.
That's the thing, is you want people that are going to create, especially like movies off of certain works. You want people that actually know the product and enjoy the product to make it. Yeah. Most of the time it's people that don't know it, and they might enjoy it if they did know it, but they don't know it very well. And they're kind of working like loosey-goosey with it. And maybe they could make something good, but most of the time it's just not good because it's not actually following what was meant to follow there. Now, this brings me, because we didn't go over everything wrong with Rings of Power so far, just all the teaser trailer.
I don't know if I want to continue, Dave.
But one of a pretty big character is now a warrior. Would you like to talk about that?
Not really, not particularly. So they fuck up Galadriel completely. One of the things about Galadriel is she is one of the most important characters as a high elf. She is essentially the sign of light in Lord of the Rings. She's an Ainur, which is one of the she's not the Valar. So there's the levels. There's a Luvatar who's God. There's the Valar, which is underneath the Luvatar. It's the children he created through his sound. And then there's the Ainur, and then there's other little things that they're basically all demigods. She is one of the demigods. Demigods don't fight mortals unless they're there to have fun. And from what it looks like, Galadriel's fighting for her life. Motherfucker never has to fight for her life against mortals. Period. The only ones that give her trouble are others like Sauron. Sauron was basically an underling of one of the Ainur, and not even one of the Valar. Like it's asinine to take that lore away and abuse it. It's asinine.
If you're ever wondering how much he knows about Lord of the Rings, I have no idea what any of those levels are. Maybe someone else does, and it's kind of surface level stuff. I have no idea.
No, it's not. That's a Silmarillion breakdown. It's essentially the Bible breakdown. But if you don't understand these certain things, that a character like Galadriel was in the Silmarillion, the first works of J.R.R. Tolkien, that explained the creation of Middle Earth and all the creatures and the god form that does it.
The Book of Genesis.
It quite literally is the Book of Genesis. Iluvatar is God. He plays music to create his children, which control the world and the creation. It's difficult. I'm not going to lie. It took me a few times to get through the Silmarillion. I've had to reread it every once in a while to continue to understand more, because there is a lot in it, but it's beautiful. And it's a work of art. And I think that's what annoys, people the most about these types of things. And I'm not mad about a good sequel attempt. I'm not mad about something that tries to further the story, like your Tron Legacy. Is it as good as Tron? No. You accept Tron for what it is in the 80s. It's campy. It's very sci-fi. Tron Legacy was a valiant attempt. It wasn't great, but it was a valiant attempt. The newer Blade Runner, a very good attempt. I don't mind those that fail. I know you have an issue with Matrix Resurrections, because it's kind of trying to bring with shiny toy. Here, Trinity's back. Neo's back. Play with Trinity and Neo again.
It very much is.
And it kind of is. But again, I don't mind forwarding a vision. That's why I will give something a chance. I do have an issue a lot with reboots. Pure reboots piss me off. What Disney is doing a lot with their live action reboots, they started off okay. Cinderella wasn't bad. Certain ones were okay. Beauty and the Beast fucking suck. I don't care what anybody says. Outside of Ewan McGregor as Lemure, he was an awesome Lemure.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor could just sing, and anything that has to do with singing, Ewan McGregor should be involved in. But as well as being the greatest Obi-Wan Kenobi of all time. But just that whole entire setting where Emma Watson's French and she's speaking in a British accent the whole time should turn the fucking movie off right away. At least try. You're an actress. Don't speak with a British accent the whole time. Like, and Aladdin pissed me off because they added a Jasmine song about how strong she is when the whole character is just strength because she defies ancient things. Like, you don't need a song included in the new Aladdin. Like, I don't know what Disney's doing with reboots, and a lot of the reboots to me are bad in a lot of ways. Remakes, if it's long enough, like you said, Dave, to try and reintroduce it to a new generation, that's okay. It's what they did with Batman Begins, because that was about 20 years later. They tried with Superman and failed a few times, but they waited a decade in between for most of them. This Batman with Robert Pattinson's a little rushed because they just failed with Ben Affleck, but it does look very good. But, I'm topsy-turvy with it, Dave, because if they're going to try and respect it and do well, the thing with the Batmans is, even with the Ben Affleck Batman, they did try to stick to the lore. I know they're like, oh, Batman killed. It was in a flashback. Leave him the fuck alone. It was in a dream. It wasn't real. But I don't know. You just got me angry. You just got me real angry.
That's fine. That was really fun. But that's the thing that really gets my goat with a lot of this stuff. Is
you want to know what grinds my gears? Exactly. Peter Griffin grinds my gears.
But it's just, it comes down to just big company want money, big company push out nostalgia. And it's what a lot of it is. And luckily enough, we do have other forms of entertainment that we can find more original takes on even characters that we know and love, like video games. I'll consistently tout how well video games do with characters a good amount of times. Injustice
is one of the best DC stories told in the last 20 years. Now, I have a question for you. Is this strictly an American problem? Because me and you, we like our anime. We like our manga. And like you said, we read a lot of the same exact tropes. Shonen is shonen. Seinen is seinen. Like, all like the characters are what they are. If you're a girl that likes shoujo, like, and anyone that doesn't know what this is kind of like categories of these anime and manga genres essentially, where, anything like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, they're all shonens. Protagonist is kind of stupid and goofy, gets stronger all the time, beats up people. you'll see that. But you said you don't have a problem with tropes. I think we're kind of spoiled with that because the Japanese aren't afraid to continue to use tropes with original ideas and even take some unoriginal ideas and tweak them enough where it's an interesting story. Is this strictly an American big studio problem where they'd rather give easy money than take a chance and do something legitimate?
I guess I would say yes, but we also don't live in Japan, so I don't know exactly if they have the same problem with some things that we don't know.
They love Dragon Ball Z. It's come back after 25 years, and Dragon Ball Super is gigantic again.
That's fair. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if they have some similar issues with just things that we don't know, because we only care about so much of that culture.
Yes.
So, but that is just a big issue in America, entertainment movie wise, and even show wise. It's just big company gives to make something just not creative. And I mean, that's why you saw Joker become so big, because it was an actually creative take on this character. Joker has been done so many times in movies and TV shows, but it just hasn't been done like that. We know he's going to be crazy. We know he's going to laugh. We know he's going to do certain things, but whether it was the cinematography, whether it was Joaquin Phoenix being absolutely insane and getting so into character, which is unbelievable, and whether it's just some of the ideas for scenes in that movie is just wild shit that they wouldn't put in something that they're trying to make vanilla. So, but that's why that became so big, because you had someone, I cannot remember the director's name right now, which is incredible.
For which one again?
For Joker. But you had
looking that up.
But you had someone that was willing to take risks on something. And actually, going completely off the superhero path, a movie that I loved was Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler. I don't know if you saw that, Alex. Yeah. I loved
Todd Phillips was the director of Joker.
Todd Phillips, thank you. But I loved Uncut Gems. One of the reasons why is because it was so different from other things that you're seeing today.
Yes.
It's just such a dumb story. The synopsis is a New York Jewish man is way too into gambling. That's all it is. but it's done well enough. Adam Sandler acts his heart out in this, man. Like, genuinely fantastic job. And they know how to build up tension. They know when to put what scene where. They knew how to frame this and picture it all together so that it was an original story to be told. You don't need something blowing up all the time. You don't need some people fighting all the time. You don't need these vanilla ass interactions between people in order for someone to understand and enjoy what's going on in your movie. Sometimes it is best to completely bewilder your audience, because that makes them interested in what's going on. But right now, we just it's a curse of complacency. We're way too complacent with a lot of the things that we like to put out. And don't get me wrong, there is plenty of good stuff, but it just seems like there's so much in reboots and so much in just, they liked this last time. Let's just do something really, really basically the same. So, I don't know.
I feel like it's difficult because we saw a big string of vampire stuff. We saw a big string of zombie stuff pop up at the same time. And it seems like they fall in love with a certain thing for a little while. They run it out its course. Walking Dead is still kicking, but I feel like Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead have fallen a little bit out of favor besides with the super faithful. They're not building a fan base anymore with any zombie stuff. Vampire Diaries, Twilight, even what's the one that I love? What's her face? Celine and Underworld. Still waiting for a new Underworld because the last one was good and set up a lot. But it's like we're waiting so long in between these things. I don't know, Dave. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think that they're going to stop doing this because it does sell.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But one thing, I guess we could say that kind of a saving grace is there is some creativity. Disney is still extremely creative with their animated movies. You know, Encanto is on in my house constantly, and I'm okay with it because it is a, you know, plot is decent. It's not a great plot, honestly, not gonna lie. The characters are interesting. The songs are good. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a genius when it comes to the songs. I know you kind of complain that we don't talk about Bruno as kind of your bland, you know, Spanish
It's not exactly
song.
bland. It's not exactly bland. It's just I never said I disliked the song. I think it's a good song.
But then there's other, you know,
different. That's different. We'll
it's
talk
not,
about that
you know, and to me, with like that with thing, and then Raya and the Last Dragon was very good. They keep on coming up with original new concepts. Disney's ahead of the fray with that. But even, you know, but then we look at, again, they just rehashed Ice Age on Disney because Disney bought it. They just rehashed it. So again, it's what you're talking about there. But it's kind of, I don't know what the answer is, Dave. You pissed me off with Lord of the Rings. You succeeded to piss me off. Now, what do you think? We could jump back into the superhero thing for 1 second, though, because Marvel's about to enter into a weird world. A lot of their originals are aging out or they're done. I don't think Chris Evans is ever coming back as Captain America. Robert Downey Jr. is going to be done as Iron Man. It already looked as, you know, we're getting hints of Daniel Radcliffe is maybe going to become the new Wolverine, because apparently he makes an appearance in the Multiverse of Madness as Wolverine. So Hugh Jackman, goodbye. Tom Holland brought back, spoiler alert, Tom Holland, you know, if you haven't seen the new movie, there's potential for collaborations, but he is Spider-Man. They're going in a different direction. Do you see this kind of superhero craze that we've had over the last 25 years now continuing with the new crop?
Oh, yeah, it could definitely continue. There's plenty of nerds your age to my age that'll still go watch that shit.
Would you be cool with a new Spider-Man though? Because we're now on our third Spider-Man in 20 years. Would you be cool if they come back and make a new Spider-Man, Peter Parker again?
So we actually touched on this. I don't know if it was last week, but we touched on this in one of our other podcasts, which is you made the comparison between the manga we like to read and Western comics. And the fact of the matter is, at least it seems with a lot of manga we like to read, that manga dies. That manga's done. It's closed. You don't touch it. In comics, there's a multiverse. Every single character is reused all the time, and there's always a new story because
they die and they come back all the time.
Basically, they're never dead. They're never dead. The case is never closed.
They're all Goku.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I don't like about a lot of stories, and that's basically what we're complaining about now. Now we don't let things die.
Yeah.
We don't let it be. We just keep digging it back up and digging it back up. And I mean, overall, in the whole multiverse thing, yeah, it's fine to have all these new Spider-Mans or whatever like that. Honestly, I'd rather see Miles Morales because it would at least be different. It wouldn't be Peter Parker anymore. And for me, it's just like you could bring up a new character as kind of taking the place of these characters instead. For me, it just gets annoying because for me, you just need every good thing needs to have a closing. It needs to die. Otherwise, it stops being good.
So as much as we complain about fandom and how much fans suck and how they're infatuated and gatekeeping, is there a reason for it? Is there become a grown, legitimate reason for gatekeeping because of how bad Hollywood does everything?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to touch on. That's why fandom is the second part. There's a lot of cons to fandoms. We don't have to get into all of them on this podcast.
We can have a whole other podcast why fandom sucks in every which way. Sports, comics, shows, all of it.
Exactly. But the pro to fandoms is that these people genuinely know this core subject. These people genuinely care about this core subject.
They hold people accountable.
And, well, yeah, that's a part of it. They hold people accountable, and they just, if you haven't noticed, a lot of fandoms don't want to put up with bullshit in their fandom. They just want to enjoy their thing. And that's the good part about some fandoms. And now, obviously, there's a lot of people in fandoms that are absolutely insane and need to calm down. That's a part of the cons of fandoms. Yet again, we could go into a lot of cons of fandoms. But one of the pros of fandoms is that, it builds something of interest that people can get along with and that people can enjoy. And just don't bullshit with their thing. But that's what we're seeing a lot of right now. And that's why you do gatekeep fandoms. And I know people want to put a negative connotation on that word, but it's basically just like, hey, do you want to come in and enjoy this with us, or do you want to come in and ruin it? Because if you're going to come in and ruin it, we don't want you in here. It's that simple. We do not want you in here if you don't actually care about this. If you care about it, then I want you in here.
Yeah, people that point to that gatekeeping is a good thing. Just look at the Death Note from Netflix and look at Cowboy Bebop's attempt. They were both pretty bad. And we have a live action Pokemon apparently coming. It could either be a good, serious Pokemon show because, Detective Pikachu was fantastic. I thought it was a really good movie. I thought it was done very well with the way they made the Pokemon move, the way they made them interact and all that type of stuff. We saw the attacks. But they can make it terrible. If they try to make this Ash Ketchum and campy, it's going to fucking suck. But if they try to take it from the manga and they make it red in his tail, it could be a very good action, anime adaptation. So we'll see. We'll see where they go there. But again, reboot. They're just bringing Pokemon back because they know we will attempt to watch it to see if it's bad. Mm-hmm. We will watch it just to see how terrible it is and to pick it apart. That's the purpose. They will do it.
Episode 1.
I'll watch it.
Will always get the most views.
And I will watch it. And I will probably watch a full season with hopes that at one point it won't suck and it'll actually stick to any sort of continuity and it will just go off the rails. Every single episode be terrible. And I will be happy in my wallow in hatred. So, David, do you have anything else to say before we close this bad boy out?
Well, the closing thing is just let things die. Let stories end. That is the beauty of stories. It's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of everything. Flowers are only beautiful because eventually they will wilt. Let stories die.
Wow, David just got real deep there. I don't even know if I can finish the show. That was deep.
Because that's the whole thing about this. That's like the whole idea behind this.
It's like the Linkin Park quote about the picture when, when the paper's crumpled up, it can't be perfect again. Like that was Mike Shinoda level deep here. We just got philosophizing in here. But
I told you I'm a snooty bitch.
You are a snooty bitch. You are a when in doubt pinky out about this type of stuff.
Yes.
But ultimately, I guess I'm kind of torn. If you're attempting to forward the vision and you fail, I'm okay with it. Mad Max is a good example. Fury Road wasn't good, but it was an attempt to move the story forward. It wasn't trying to reboot it. It wasn't a good movie.
Fury Road was great because of that guy in the truck with the fucking with the guitar going absolutely ape shit. That was one of the best things I've ever seen in
But if you like Mad Max, it was not good. If you like the original Mad Max, it was not good.
Yeah, but that guy made the whole movie.
It was not a very good, rendition of Mad Max and all that
made
world.
The whole movie. I don't care.
But again, it was an attempt to further the story, so I'm not going to fault it. But if you're just remaking things to remake it for name only, I think David would have been okay if Matrix came back and Neo had nothing to do with it. I think David would have been fine if it would have just Enter the Matrix was great because it had nothing to do with Neo. But let's end out the show. We can go another 7 hours on this. Mm-hmm. I ultimately, I'm torn. If you want to do it right. If you're going to do it just for the money, fuck off. I guess that's where I am. So, but all right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed the limited to no politics, because if you did, I'm about to ruin your world right now. Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine should fight back. Western powers should join them. Fuck Russia. Okay, politics done. So if anybody, if you like what you hear on the show, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars on especially Spotify and iTunes. I think they're the only 2 places you can. Spread us word of mouth. If you just like the weekly show because we don't go super politics heavy all the time, do it up. Only listen to the weekly. But if you like listening to me break down articles and kind of give my opinion, David doesn't like doing that with me. He goes away every time. But, just come on and do that. Or do both. I don't care. Socials, Alex West Show. Go search it. Go find it. And as always, everybody, we appreciate you listening. Dave, we'll be back next week, hopefully.
Yes, we should be.
All right.
Unless something happens.
Oh, God willing. All right. Everyone.
Like I said, you got to let things die.
We might be those flowers at the back end, Dave. We're the flowers at the back end. Morbid ending. So long, everybody.